How ETs, higher dimensional beings, the Mandela Effect, prove that we are in fact living in a 3D projected simulation, and how transdimensional beings are continuously sending us messages to awaken us. Hi, this is Mahadev, the Thunder Wizard. My apologies for all of the construction sound going on out there. Hopefully you can hear me over that. So I want to talk to you about just some thoughts that I'm having. So as you know, this concept of us living in a 3D simulation is not new at all. It is as old as spirituality. I mean, you go all the way back to 40, 50, 100,000 years ago, shamans were talking about that we live in the dream time. Of course, now we've got a modern understanding of it where people talk about exiting the matrix. Some people literally believe that they live in a digital video game, like somebody has created a digital video game. There are some people, somebody left a comment on the channel not too long ago, who literally believed that we live in the exact scenario that's shown in the movie The Matrix, that we're going to wake up in a tube with wires stuck into us, and people really believe that. Now, I used to really judge that, and I don't anymore, because people are trying to explain their honest experience in symbology they understand, and we understand computer programs. Now, I don't think we live in a computer program, but I absolutely believe that we are living in a non-real, meaning it's, this reality that we experience is not as real as we think it is. And it is nothing more than a projection that is projected onto a three-dimensional screen. So our reality has as much reality as when you're watching something on your two-dimensional screen, you're watching something in a movie theater, the characters walking around on that screen, that reality is just as real as this one. The only difference is those were actors, playing a character in a movie, whereas we are actual conscious beings that are walking around in a 3D simulation, but it's a holographic projection, and we think that it's real, but it's not. I can't remember the name of the scientist, the physicist. I don't know actually what kind of scientist he was, but he came to the conclusion after years and years and years of studying, he came to the conclusion that our perception of 3D reality is about as real as your perception when you're moving your mouse on your laptop interacting with different icons. Now the icons, if I go up here, and I'm doing it right now, I put my cursor over something, a folder on my desktop, and I move it, I think I have this experience that I'm actually picking a thing up and moving it onto my desktop, but that isn't happening. What's happening is that there's all kinds of ones and zeros simulating that, so that I have an experience of something that feels like my reality, but it's not. It's all a simulation. And he came to the conclusion that there's a 0% chance that our interaction with reality is accurate. And he said the conclusion he came to was that exactly what I described, is that we have enough ability to interact with the things in our 3D environment, but our brain turns everything into icons on a desktop. So I think I'm picking up a glass filled with, some juice in here, but those are all things that are made up in my head that allow me to survive in this three-dimensional simulation long enough, and I stay alive long enough so that I can perpetuate the species. Now, I chose not to do that in this life, but that's that's how we're designed. We're designed to live and survive long enough so that we can have offspring and keep the species alive. So that's a scientist's understanding of this. But, if any of you are doing the interdimensional meditation, and you're doing CE5 and other things like that, your reality is starting to change. Your understanding of reality and of yourself, especially. The difference between us and the scientist is the scientist is getting a more accurate understanding of this false reality that we're living in. But he's not getting any more awareness of his essence, which is a very sad thing. It creates a very sad scenario. So that's where spirituality comes in, because if you are following some kind of spiritual practice or discipline, then ideally you're starting to learn more about yourself. So working interdimensionally, which I believe is a brand new concept that is now universally available to all humans and has never been this available ever in the history of the human race. And it's getting increasingly more available each day. If you interact interdimensionally, your understanding of yourself starts to expand, in a quantum leap. It starts expanding hugely. So you're no longer just this person living on Earth with, 5'9" with this, and here are my problems, my limitations, and my childhood, and what I want, and my money. And instead of all that, you have to now expand into being this infinite, multi-dimensional being that has chosen to limit their experience to this three-dimensional projection. And it becomes very challenging because this three-dimensional projection is designed to hypnotize you into believing that this is reality. So when you get other information that comes to you from higher dimensions, this third-dimensional reality is designed to gaslight you out of it. Because if you wake up to who you truly are, then the whole point of this simulation goes away. And this is what's happening with me, and I think it's happening with some of you as well. And a lot of people long before right around 2012 it seemed, 2000 was when The Matrix came out. By the way, I was an actor at the time, and I was a reader for that movie. I worked with the casting director, Mally Finn, and I sat opposite, many of the actors that you see in the movie. I sat opposite, and I played Neo. And I would read the part of Neo while they came in on camera auditioning for the movie. Now, why they didn't audition me, none of us will ever know. But around 2000, people were starting to understand this. This is where these movies came from. And it became so real, people started thinking that the movie was real. And it turns out that things are this way. I'm coming to this, reluctantly coming to this conclusion. We talked about this yesterday in we talked about this yesterday in Is the Earth Splitting into Two? A 3D lower Earth and a 5D higher Earth. And I was resistant to this concept, even though I was feeling this from the communications I was getting from my higher dimensional friends. People that I know, students and otherwise, who are doing the interdimensional meditations, as well as people like, what's her name? Dolores Cannon and others have been saying for decades that the Earth is splitting into two. that there are going to be two Earths. There's going to be a lower vibrational third dimensional Earth, and there's going to be a higher vibrational third dimensional Earth, which we will refer to as 5D, even though it's not technically not the fifth dimension, but it will be closer to a fifth dimensional experience. At least that's how I understand it. As I said in this video, I didn't like that idea. I resisted that idea until some people started kind of convincing me that maybe this is what was happening. And so I took it to my higher dimensional friends, and they started showing me signs that it were true. And I talked about that in the video I did yesterday. But what I want to talk about today is, one of the things that has bothered me since I've been having this experience almost a year ago, is why can't the higher dimensional beings just simply, beam down and just manifest in 3D and just sit down and tell you the truth? That's always bothered me. It's like I don't understand. Even as I'm sitting here right now, my right ear, I'm convinced is like hooked up energetically to higher dimensions, and in what exact way I don't know. I'm continuously on a daily basis, some days more than others, getting bombarded. I don't mean that in a bad way, but I get bombarded with these blissful waves of higher dimensional energy. When I do interdimensional meditation, the energy becomes extremely powerful and intense, and it's not coming from our dimension. And then sometimes when these energy waves will hit me, I'll go, I just wish you guys could tell me what it is you're just, sit down and talk to me and tell me what you're trying to tell me. You get messages through dreams. You get messages, when higher dimensional beings show up, they tend to show up in orbs of light. These kinds of things. Even if you might see the outline of a light beam sort of in the distance. This seems to be the way that they prefer to manifest. I assume they have the ability, if they wanted to turn their energy all the way down so that they could literally manifest in 3D. And I assume that's happened. Hasn't happened with me, to the best of my knowledge. So it makes me wonder why. Why is it so? Because it takes a lot of effort. It takes faith. If you guys think it's easy for me to come on here and tell you this is what's happening right now, that the Earth is splitting into two different, forms of this, two different simulations. One is going to be a lot more pleasant than the other, but two simulations are being created. If you think that's easy for me to say, you're wrong. It's not easy. I struggle with accepting this every day. I'm having to fight against the part of my brain that wants to gaslight me out of all of it, for all kinds of reasons. But the evidence that I have is so overwhelming I can't ignore it, even though my rational brain doesn't get it. So I wanted to talk about that. And there's been so many movies made, so many television shows and movies, and I'm thinking of a South Park series of episodes where people were hooked up to some virtual reality thing, and the other South Park kids had to go into the program and then tell the person, you're asleep, you are in the game right now. And they're like, no, I'm not the one in the game, you're the one that's asleep in the game. There's been of course the Matrix movies, where there's this theme, you can't get away from it, where the people in the dream can't comprehend that it's not real. And the people who aren't in the dream or aren't in the simulation, they can't interact with you directly. Either because you won't see them, you won't notice them, or because of the nature of the whole thing, you have to go into the simulation to be able to interact with people. And then the best thing, in a lot of these situations is they send messages. They'll send number messages, or they'll put a glitch in the matrix somehow. And people in it have to sort of wake up to go, and they have to come to the realization themselves, oh my God, I'm dreaming. I'm in a simulation. I'm in a program. This isn't real. And then they have to struggle with that. And that's how I feel. Because it takes a lot of, if you think this is easy for me, it's not. It takes a lot of dedication and a lot of commitment and a lot of, assumption. I have to just buy into the assumption that it's true. Because here's the thing about this two earth splitting. If you don't do anything, it's guaranteed you will slip into the lower one. The higher dimensional earth, and I'm willing to be wrong about this, but the higher dimensional earth demands a conscious choice on your part. You have to choose it. And then you have to work towards that choice in your belief, in your actions, and probably in your meditations. It may take, you think about, how Neo woke up from the dream. He's given 2 pills in a simulation. He's given two simulated pills, which is ridiculous. And he has to choose. And somehow grabbing the pill and swallowing it, somehow that creates some tracer program. I mean, if that were the case, they could have just tackled him and force-fed him the pill. But that's not going to work. He has to choose it. So the pill is just a symbol. It doesn't mean anything. But that symbol is actually what is going on. And this is to me what CE5. CE5 is the red pill. If you do CE5, that's the equivalent, or if you do interdimensional meditation, that is the equivalent of Neo swallowing the pill. It doesn't happen right away. He's sitting there and all of a sudden the mirror starts doing weird things, and then next thing you know, and then he wakes up. Well, we haven't completely woken up yet. If you're still in any third dimensional reality, you haven't woken up yet. And when you do wake up, you will be somebody far different than you realize. And, we've talked for centuries about enlightenment. That sounded scary. We've been talking about the noise outside sounded scary. We've been talking about enlightenment for thousands of years. And I recently had an experience in my interdimensional meditation, that I've had, I'm assuming, hundreds or thousands of lives. I can remember a handful of them. And the ones that I remember have all been, either they vacillate between me being some kind of a spiritual person, like, in one case I was a priest in the Middle Ages, and I was actually revealing people the power of consciousness and, showing that religion was nonsense. And of course, that was the Middle Ages in France during the Catholic period, and they nailed me to the door of the church and tore me to shreds, and I died being torn to pieces by this angry mob. And I remember looking up at this guy, asking God, why? Why did you do this to me? You asked me to come here and do this. Why? And I had other lives where I was a mercenary. In one I was this elite swordsman and killed a bunch of people. And I remember some challenging different lives. But what I've come to find out is that none of those were waking up to who I was. Now, I don't remember what happened in between lives. There probably was situations where I woke up and was in, in infinity, but I chose to come back. But I'm coming to realize that totally waking up from this means that you've gotten to the place where you choose to never incarnate again. And you wake up to your full essence, which is divinity, a deity. Each one of us, if you've made it into Earth, you're a deity. So we're coming to the point where human 3D reincarnation is going to come to an end for those that choose to move to the higher, the 5D Earth. Those that don't and choose to stay in the lower 3D Earth, which is going to get worse, they're probably going to have to choose to keep reincarnating. Again, it's a choice. But what I wanted to talk about the Mandela Effect today is that the Mandela Effect, to me, I find absolutely fascinating. And there are two that are sticking out in my mind. One is the Black Tom event, the Black Tom explosion. I promise you that didn't happen. I know that didn't happen. So since there's archaeological proof that it did, and now there is other proof, there's other historical proof that keeps popping up as time goes on. More and more articles and films and things like that are literally appearing out of nowhere. So a history is creating itself. A history that didn't exist is creating itself. And another interesting Mandela effect, which I don't know enough about it to know, but it's another interesting one. Maybe somebody can tell me otherwise, but apparently in the 1930s in Germany, people were able to video chat. It was a thing. And the government actually had these video chat portals like telephone booths. And you would go in and you would spend, it cost, I guess it was kind of expensive, but it would cost money. And you would go and sit in this booth and there would be this video screen. And apparently the video screen was extremely good. And you could video chat with somebody in, hundreds of miles away. And that supposedly ended just before World War II. I can guarantee you that never happened. I can guarantee you that didn't happen. We would have known about it. It would have been such a huge deal. In high school, we would have learned about it in history about, wow, and people would be saying, how come we don't have that? It never happened. So what I'm seeing now is that these two earths, as they're splitting apart, is that two different histories. Because as 3D Earth, the lower one is being created and shifting down into a lower version, it's creating a lower version history for itself. Black Tom explosion didn't happen. It makes for a worse world. It makes for a world that is more dangerous, more insidious, more violent, more frightening, more unsafe. The 1930s video chat public thing in Germany where you could go and pay money and video chat, that creates a more transhuman history. So 3D Earth is moving to a more transhumanism, more violent, more even less spiritual, less conscious, emptier place than the 3D world we have now, as they're splitting apart. And then the other Mandela effects, which are very interesting, that are positive, which we see instead of technology and in warfare. On the other end of it, when it comes to creativity, things that are more positive, we see some really interesting things like, Gracie never saying good night, Gracie. He used to say, I forget his name. He used to say good night, Gracie. And the joke was that she was, a ditz. And she would say, good night, Gracie. She did it every night. Now it's never happened. On every single one of the television shows and things like that Burns and Allen did, she never once says good night, Gracie. He says, say good night, Gracie, and she says good night. And what has happened is that what used to devalue somebody for being smart, for not being smart, and for sexist, creating that she's just a stupid ditzy woman. Now we're moving into a reality where we don't do that. We don't devalue people based on their sex or their intelligence. And so now she has an exit line that's not funny, but it doesn't devalue her. We've got changes in movies. We've got changes in songs. The favorite Mandela Effect song for me is The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. Because, and then at the end it says, tomorrow is always a day away, is what it used to be, which means tomorrow never comes for you. It's supposed to mean something else, but tomorrow is always a day away, meaning it never gets there. You never get to it. That has changed to tomorrow is only a day away. That's positive. So what we're seeing is two different histories being created, because the earth, as it pulls apart, as the lower 3D or the lower 3D gets worse, the history gets worse. For the higher 3D, where we go into a more loving state, the Mandela Effect is rewriting itself with a more positive message. So I find that very interesting. Very interesting. But, you have to choose to want to see the truth. The messages that have been coming to me from higher dimensions, I could discount them if I wanted to, but I'm choosing not to. And, here's the way to look at it. If you're having doubts, you would be only human if you have doubts. If you have doubts about the solar flash, if you have doubts about shifting to a higher dimension, if you have doubts about all this, here's the way that I look at it. I'm continuing to put as much time and effort as I can into my interdimensional meditation. I'm putting as much effort as I can into hearing the messages and sharing them with you, and sharing with you the techniques that I'm using to shift myself up. Even though a lot of what is happening to me, I don't understand what the meaning of it is. So I've just chosen to, when I go into interdimensional meditation and they tell me that, I'm this amazing deity, blah, 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 I accept it at face value. And then when I come out of the meditation, I do my best. Sometimes I have to work at it, but I do my best not to try and figure it out. And then I don't get attached to it. If I was attached to the solar flash event, I would be upset right now because it hasn't happened yet. And there only seems to be some hints that it's happening, but I could easily say it's not happening. I know for a fact that something is happening, and I can feel it. But I am still choosing to keep looking at that and bringing that into my consciousness. I am determined to shift myself into that. And how you do that without being attached to the outcome is challenging. And to stay this middle ground where you're in this state of emptiness and receptivity, and accept these possibilities. This is, I think how we do this. The people who go way off the deep end and are trying to escape their pain through the solar flash and the matrix and all of that, they're actually working themselves to go backwards instead of forwards. And so staying positive, doing the work to continue to focus on your soul desire and take action towards your soul desire, and then just giving it up, and being powerless. This is, somebody had a problem with this and sent me a thing, you shouldn't talk about being powerless because people aren't going to like that. I don't give a crap if you like it or don't like it. My job is to tell you the truth. It's up to you to do whatever you want with that truth. That's not my problem. My problem is to give you the truth. Your job is to take it and accept it or not accept it, to act on it or don't act on it. The rest of it's none of my business. So don't try and manipulate me into a different message because you don't like it or you think other people won't like it. Hey man, if 5 people like it and 5 people make it to 5D and 95 people don't like it and don't make it to 5D, that's not my problem. I'm not going to change the message or water it down because somebody might not like it. I never said this was easy. This is a very challenging time to live. It's very challenging to see the reality and not lose your mind. It's very challenging to see the reality and not just become part of the matrix and start yourself. And it's very hard not to do that. There's a lot of energy going in this direction. So it doesn't faze me a bit if the majority of people can't stomach what I'm telling. That's not my problem. We live in a completely unbelievable scenario. We live in an unreal 3-dimensional simulation, and we have to wake up. Nothing easy about that. So, at least not for me. If it's easy for you, my hair is off to you. Anyway, let's just keep doing the work. As you can see, I'm still continuing to change. I will continue to alter my understanding. If I'm wrong, I will say so. I will continue to work in that direction, because what I was going to say is that even if I'm wrong, it's only helping me, because I'm going after my soul desire, which means I'm going to be happier. I am dropping the negativity. I'm dropping the fear. I am becoming more loving and more accepting and more tolerant. And I'm expanding into greater self-awareness and in greater self-esteem. Even if I'm wrong, even if it's just a fantasy in my head, my life is getting better. My business is continuing to improve. I'm living better places. I'm physically healthier and happier. So even if that's the only reality, is the internal reality, my internal reality is getting a lot better. So I've got nothing to lose by continuing to open myself up to this reality and accepting that we're going to shift into a higher 5D world where a lot of the negativity is going to go away. And so I've got nothing to lose. If you doubt it, then what have you got left? You go back to this empty, world that's isolated and full of craziness, and there's no hope, and there's no love, and there's no luck, and it's just, you gotta dog eat dog and fight for every scrap and hate yourself in the process. If that's what the truth is, I'm not interested. I'm far more interested in this reality that is beginning to grow within me, and that is creating my external reality. I'm much more interested in that. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do. In any case, I think that the Mandela Effect, if you look at it, is showing not that 2 different timelines are converging, but the opposite, that one timeline is splitting into 2. And those who stay connected to the narrative, their history is going to get more violent and more transhumanistic. Those of us who continue to work towards love, spirituality, happiness, our history is going to change where things that used to be devaluing to people are going to be transformed into, like Gracie doesn't devalue herself. She doesn't act like a stupid ditz when he says, say goodnight, Gracie, and she doesn't say goodnight, Gracie, like she used to. Now she acts with dignity and with self-respect, and she just says goodnight. And other things, as I said, the songs that are changing. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts for today, because I don't have the ability to do a live stream today, so I'm just going to upload this. And I hope that that encourages you. Please keep doing the work, guys. Interdimensional meditation, free stuff. I just uploaded a free interdimensional meditation. Please feel free to give it a try. Do the work, whatever it is. Do the work. And don't be afraid to reach out and get help. Whether that's working with me as an apprentice, or whether you're getting a one-on-one with me, or if you're reaching out to a therapist, to a mentor, to a psychologist, whether you're going to finally go and quit weed or quit drinking or quit doing drugs and go to a 12-step group. If you're getting out of that codependent relationship and you decide you want to go to Al-Anon or Adult Children of Alcoholics or Codependence Anonymous, get your ass in a 12-step group. 12 steps is the fastest way to get yourself ready for 5D. And make sure that you're investing in yourself. Now is the time. At the very least, take advantage of the meditation tools that I have on the free channel. And of course, subscribing to the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong is the most powerful tool that I can offer you. That's my gift to you. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.